Hi there and welcome. Today I am joined by Drew Coleman, team lead of the Drew Coleman team, and Noah Blanton, president of WFG National Title here in the metro area. So thank you so much for being here.
Yep, glad to be here.
So we're going to ask a couple questions about the market and see what's going on there. So Noah, recently you made a pretty bold statement to our team. And you said that this would be the best time to buy or sell. This whole year would be in January, February, early 2019. Can you explain?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. There's a confluence of factors right now where we have falling interest rates primarily, which are raising the effective purchasing power of buyers. And we've had moderating pricing and a little bit of an uptick in inventory, although I think we're still well below 3 months or thereabouts. You can speak to that. But I think those things have come together, and then also moderating velocity to where it's a great time to purchase real estate. And my opinion is the first quarter is going to be one of the best times of the year to purchase real estate.
Okay, and Drew, do you agree that this quarter here, the early quarter of 2019, is the best time to purchase real estate in Portland?
Buyers seem to be agreeing with that sentiment based on kind of trajectory of how often we've seen things sell so far. I mean, granted, we're halfway through the first quarter, I think, as of today, right? 15th.
Yep.
So, when you take a rate at what had popped up to most of the time rates go in eighths, but 5.2, let's say, down to 4.4, the rule of thumb is that for every 1% difference in interest rates, the purchasing power of a buyer changes by 10%. So at the median price point, we're talking 400,000, let's say, for a round number. A drop of 0.7% gives you, a lot of buying power. You're talking about $28,000. So
Okay.
yeah.
And of course, you also know, my opinion is for residential real estate, you should buy it when you need it.
Right.
So I'm not a big proponent of timing the market when it comes to buying. I think NAR says the median tenure of a seller is 10 years. And we know the long-term appreciation of real estate's 3.5%. I think when you need real estate, you buy it.
Okay.
But if you want to feel particularly good about it, now might be a good time.
Okay, great. So how is this affecting sellers? We're talking a lot about good rates and what that means for buyers, them having more purchasing power. How do you see that affecting sellers, Noah?
Well, I think the effective purchasing power of a buyer goes up, and it means they can afford more of the seller's home. So value and affordability or approachability are two different things. And, as the interest rate goes up, it eats away at the affordability of a house, maybe not necessarily the value, but more and more people can now approach the median priced home as opposed to, maybe 6 months ago, with rates being the lowest they've been in the last 10 or 12 months. So I think it means less concession, more approachability in terms of affordability.
Okay. What are you seeing for your sellers?
Well, I think it's benefiting them. I mean, it's somewhat of a three-legged stool that supports the purchasability of real estate for buyers, which affects sellers, which are interest rates, which is a big component, as well as taxes and price. So the fact that leg of the stool has shortened makes it a lot more achievable for people. It's been a really good market. It's kind of interesting. At one of the board meetings I was attending recently, they talked about the average realtor in the Portland metro area is now, I think, 52 years old. But that realtor has likely been in the business about 10 years on average, this average hypothetical realtor, but has never worked in a real estate environment where rates are above 5%.
Yeah.
And that speaks, I think, to buyers too and sellers. We've just gotten so used to it. We're in such a low rate environment. There's gonna be a shift. But right now, people are like, gosh, it's like the good old days, right? We're back in the 4s. We should really be in the 3s, but we're in the 4s for now, and cheap money abounds.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So Noah, you mentioned briefly that the best time to buy a house is when you need one,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so what is the difference between demand for housing and the demand for home ownership, and how do you see that?
Yeah, I see those as really very separate things. So as the metro area has grown, we've added several 100,000 people in the last few years, and we haven't built or sold several 100,000 homes. What we have done is added tens of thousands of rental units in, and so those people have met their demand for shelter in some way other than home ownership. Although I think we know statistically most people would prefer to own. So as we moderate interest rates and some inventory, I think it opens it up to more and more people being able to meet their demand for housing with home ownership, which comes with all of the benefits that we know of. I always like to say, you know, what's the option? Are you going to not spend money on shelter? Well, no, I'm going to spend money. Well, wouldn't you then prefer that money was at least hedged against inflation? At the least? Yes. Okay, well then, you know, you should want to buy, and most people do. So we have a lot of people in market rate apartments in Portland right now, tens of thousands of them, that now is a great time for them to consider moving into a purchase market that presents them with some really favorable opportunities.
Sure. So inventory has been a big buzzword along with rates recently, right? So what is inventory doing? Do you see that scarcity is playing into all the people who are in market rate apartments?
Well, it's
Drew?
funny, you know, in a lot of markets, stock market being an example, just like the real estate market, people tend to do things in the opposite time of when they should. So, you know, oh, the stock market's at a new high, I should buy more stocks. Oh, it's at a low, who knows how low it's going to go. When doing something like a dollar cost average or something, it always makes more sense. And we see that in real estate as well. So, you know, as interest rates start creeping up and end the year, if economists' predictions are right, probably in the 5.1, 5.2, 5.3 range, we'll probably actually see some people wanting to make the jump and lock it in as it's going up, which is the reverse of what you'd think. But I still think it's a great time to buy, and hopefully people watching this telecast can say, okay, maybe take advantage of it before it reaches that point.
So inventory, what are you seeing with inventory? Are you
Yeah.
seeing there be more options out there for buyers?
Well, it's funny. People are really good at reading 2 years ago's newspapers, and I don't know why they don't pay attention to today's. But one thing is, you know, we sit down with sellers a lot of the time, and they're like, well, you know, Sally and Bob next door sold their house with 14 offers in 17 minutes, and it's like, that's wonderful for them. We're not seeing that now. That was a function of 0.8 months of inventory metro-wide. Now, on average, depending on which niche market you're in, you're probably somewhere in the 2.5 to 4 months of inventory, which is still a very healthy period. I mean, it used to be that we would say 6 months of inventory was a equilibrium market, but I think that was maybe kind of pre-internet and the speed of dissemination of listing information. So often we're saying maybe 3 months is a pretty equilibrium market. So we're kind of right there. We're kind of, hey, buyers and sellers have to come to an agreement. It's kind of a mutual negotiation type of market. And I think still a very healthy time to sell a house.
So about 3 months of inventory right now?
Sure, that's
you're
a good,
seeing?
yeah.
Okay. So if I'm a seller and I'm trying to put my house on the market, what does that 3 months mean for me as a seller?
Well, I think I'd want to give you more granularity as far as the details of your specific market, but speaking in generalities, it means that when you put your house on the market, you're not going to have a line out the door like Apple on Black Friday. You're going to have people coming at hopefully a nice steady pace. You're going to get 2 or 3 showings a week, and I'm speaking to the median now for a number of months. Maybe you get one offer that you do or don't put together, and maybe a second. But on the whole, don't expect multiple offers. Expect one offer, and expect it to take some time, just because the speed of the fish in the sea. We're just not fishing in a stocked pond right now. We're fishing more in a natural river.
Okay.
And I think when you talk about, you know, then you have to present the best as well, right? You have to, it does become a lot about how you're presenting in your geography and your price range. That starts to matter a lot because there are some options. And so then the question is, well, now you might actually have some influence on the process depending on how you present and bring your property to the market. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You talk about people reading newspapers from 2 years ago. Behavioral economists tell us it'll take 10 to 12 months for the current market cycle to kind of work its way into buyers and sellers' psychology. If you can move before that information is generally known or accepted, you probably have a leg up by moving before that. So meet the market where it is, not where you want it to be at.
Yeah, and if you're not at market now, when rates have made this nice downward turn, essentially you've already, your house has naturally undergone, a 7% price reduction. Conversely, when rates start ticking up, whether you adjust the actual price or not, the affordability will have changed in the opposite direction. So I would say meet the market now where while it is. I think we're going to kind of plow sideways as far as appreciation, like Noah alluded to, over the next couple of years, which is healthy.
Yep.
3%, 2%, very healthy appreciation, right? It's sustainable too.
Yeah.
So price drops are another thing that's been happening that we've been seeing in the market a lot. Can you talk briefly about why we've been seeing so many price drops and what sellers are
Sure.
expecting versus what buyers are expecting?
Well, some of that is the 10 to 12 to 2-year newspaper window where it used to be, and in 2015, 16, it was they sold for X. I better, our house is way better than the neighbor's house. I'd better go up this margin. That logic, trying to execute that same strategy now, leads to a gap between that and fair market value because it's just not the nature of the appreciation cycle that we're seeing. So I think that's leading to price drops. I think when evaluating a property and looking at the neighborhood data and the graphs, you need to be saying, okay, what is the fair market value and what's that medium line in my neighborhood, and I need to be priced around that, adjusting for fit and finish.
And real estate's a price coordinated market, just like our entire economy is, and it doesn't reprice perfectly. So whoever I think absorbs the data and either reprices or makes offers at the correct place wins. The faster you can do that, the better. But I would also say in a falling interest rate environment, don't sell into a market that 6 months ago would have necessitated a price drop, which today may not, given the fact that that same borrower, it becomes a lot more complex as the market changes
Sure.
than just this kind of slow, steady, hey, we
Right.
know it's going to be 10% every year.
Okay.
So,
Yep. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Oregon and what population looks like here. We've been experiencing significant population growth in the Portland metro area. How much of that is from the natural increase versus migration into Portland?
Demographers categorize states in a couple different ways. I think there's 4 of them, but Oregon is a cosmopolitan state. So it means there's more native-born people leaving and more non-natives moving in, more inbound net migration.
Carrie Bradshaw with their Cosmos are moving into
That's right, yeah. And so we're very cosmopolitan right now. It feels great. Where a destination state would be less native born out, more migration in, so you kind of power up growth there. But we've added 250,000 people in the metro area in the last 5 years, something along those lines. And we're dependent on net migration for that population growth. And so it presents all sorts of interesting things to people coming into the market. You know this way better than I do. They carry the expectations of the market they're coming from if they're buyers. And so there's a lot of information around that as our market kind of changes. And we're dealing with some of the issues that come from rapid inbound migration too.
So you're out there every day working with people relocating to Oregon and trying to find a house. What are you seeing from those buyers? Are they excited to get into this market? Are they nervous? Does it depend on where they come from? What are you seeing out there?
Well, people are excited. I think it's a time of still optimism from an economic standpoint and from a real estate standpoint. Depends on where you come from too. I mean, we have people come to us from the southeastern United States and still can't believe the pricing, even though we're probably the largest, I'll use his word, cosmopolitan/metropolitan city on the West Coast. When you consider Seattle, Los Angeles, Bay Area, etc., it's still a shock when you come from your 5 acres for $300,000 in South Carolina, which is lovely too. But people coming from California, which makes up a large basis of our net migration, along with Texas and a few other places, feel like, gosh, I just sold my $800,000. I just saw the cheapest house that has sold in actual geographical San Francisco over the last few years just sold for like $700, and it's a complete fixer. You maybe saw this too. It's like 800 square feet or something. So when you come now, 800 still buys you a very nice home anywhere in the metropolitan area. So that frames their expectations, and it's interesting. I mean, I'd be interested just to know, who's moving out of the state and where they're going. Noah, maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, so native Oregonians are moving out of the state, and there's this great question of affordability, and the question is affordable to who? If you're coming from San Francisco, Portland metro area looks great, I'll take 2, you know, I mean, so it's all about context. We're still the most affordable major West Coast city there is. That's not a question from the standpoint of how much you have to earn to afford the median priced home. And Oregonians, as that changes, the native-born ones, the flow of migration is Montana, Idaho. A lot of Oregonians moving to Idaho for various reasons, but that's kind of, Idaho also is a cosmopolitan state. And you may not think that, where native-born Idahoans are leaving the state and they're being replaced.
Right.
Is that,
By
is that the
Oregonians.
correct nomenclature, Idahoans?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm thinking about Idahoan potatoes, and
Okay, I'm sure
that was where I came up with that.
I'm
so.
sure you're right. And those Idahoans are going to, they're becoming Manitobans or something like that?
Maybe,
Okay.
yeah, they could be going north.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned briefly that we're affordable. Portland's affordable
Yeah.
on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Well, in context, we're
context,
affordable.
sure.
Yeah.
I believe
Sure,
our
in context.
the income that needed to afford in Portland on average for a family is something around about $83,000,
Yeah.
I
Okay,
believe,
so about 83,000
for a household.
for a median household in the
Yeah.
Portland area.
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
So what does employment in the economy look like here in Portland? What are you seeing there?
So since the trough of the recession, I mean, I think employment has led everything. We've
Mm-hmm.
added 226,000 jobs in the metro area. They are very, very good jobs. We have a very healthy market. Wages are actually going up the most at the bottom 2 quintiles, so the bottom of the wage strata is pushing up. Believe it or not, voluntary quits are a sign of a really healthy jobs market. And we have a lot of voluntary quits where people are moving and getting more opportunity. We've had a lot of people come here, but looking backwards, we've produced in many months in the last 6 quarters, 2 jobs for every 1 person that moved here. So I mean, I kind of think that's the foundation for the whole story of growth. And the broader economy still is quite healthy by all measures, and I think we're going to continue to grow jobs here.
And what industries are you seeing the most job growth
Yeah.
in?
So a lot of growth in no surprise construction, and we've actually had to import a lot of construction skilled trades because we lost so many of them in the recession. Business and professional services, which is like us. And leisure and hospitality. Oregon's a great tourist destination. I think there will be 1,800 new hotel rooms by the end of this year
Wow.
downtown. You know, we could probably host a major convention with 5,000 or 6,000 people now and be able to accommodate them. And food and beverage. So probably not surprising that those are the categories.
Yeah, okay. So since the bubble, which you just mentioned, where do you see house prices? They were at an all-time high. Where are they now?
As opposed to, so at the height of the last,
Height of 2007, have we climbed above where house prices were there? Are we kind of evening out? Have we fully recovered? Where are we in that cycle?
well, I'll speak to just on the average. If you drew a line of appreciation about 3 to 4% over that 12-year period of time, we've appreciated about 3.5 to 4%. Remember, we had 10 or 15% depreciation rates for the last couple of years, but that was in the aftermath of a 26 to 30% drop
Sure.
coming off the high. So we're actually, I think, up 24%, I think is the number from the height.
Over that period of time,
Up over
yeah.
that period of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
which on a 12-year period is about 3%.
Yep.
So that's what we're seeing kind of, and it seems to hold quite true. There's a few areas that haven't quite recovered from a niche market standpoint, but on the whole, people are probably looking at, take what your house was worth at the day that the market was at its peak in 2007 and times it by 103%, and
Sure.
you're probably right about there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just have a few more minutes here and we have to wrap up, but if I can't buy now for whatever reason, what is your advice to me as a buyer who's trying to get in but might be in Q2 of this year or maybe Q3 of 2019? What would your advice be
Well,
to me?
for one, I'll give a plug to the Oregon Association of Realtors and start taking advantage of our new home buyer savings account, which
Okay.
is has some tax-free benefits for you, and we can get you some more information on that or any other graphs that we have. If you want to reach out to us, be happy to give you some collateral about the market. But I mean, I think Noah says it really well. buy when you want. It's funny how there's always a regression to the mean, and you look at, oh my goodness, in 2007 it was so high, in 2011 it was so low. Well, if you draw a nice straight line through the middle of it, you know, the market is a pretty steady uphill chugger at 3% over time, and real estate's still a great investment, especially to hedge it, just for the purposes of hedging against inflation.
Sure.
I think we all know someone who's, you know, you talk to your grandpa and they say, gosh, I bought my house for $34,000, and boy, it was a stretch. That working on that inflation is the reason that, you know, when you're talking about buying a house for $400,000 and your kids' 20 years from now are saying, oh, I got to spend $4 million for the same house. It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And closing remarks? Or?
Well, on that point, I think unless you intend to not spend money on housing, you should always be looking to buy.
Okay.
It's always the better. So unless you decide you're not going to have to spend money on housing, if it's quarter 2 or 3 or 4, and that's your goal, you should always be preparing for it. I didn't know that about the tax-free savings accounts. That's really cool. So I don't know that it's going to matter if that's your goal, unless you decide to not spend money on housing.
Right. Okay. Great. Sounds
Awesome.
like a good time to buy. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for being here.
Yeah, you bet.
Noah Blanton with WFG. He's the president of the metro area here, and Drew Coleman. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing this.
Yep.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. So,
It was fun.
Yeah.
Good Valentine's Day?
Yeah.
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 Did you
it
get
was
the
great.
Heartbreaker pizza from Papa Murphy's?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Okay.
in the shape of a heart,
Did you?
pineapple, and everything.
Yeah.
It's
Good.
great.
Yeah.
Hawaiian is your pizza of choice?
No, I just got it to